to Bridges. I'm Monica Schmelter, and I'm so glad that you could join us today. My guest today is Josh Paul with Anchor Ridge. And Josh, it's good to meet you and have you on the program today.
It is great to be here. Thank you so much.
So let's start with, I know that you're a musician, you're going to do some music for us. Let's start with Anchor Ridge and what that is about.
Sure. Well, Anchor Ridge, it really started out of a storage bin, and we just had the stuff. We wanted to go out to this park in our town and really just bless the community, tell people about Christ, because we know that's what really changes people's lives. And I don't know what happened. A few hundred people showed up. And
a few hundred?
I know.
Yeah. Were you expecting a few hundred?
No, not at all.
Was it something like that you promoted? We've got food? I mean, how did people know to come?
We had a free cookout and stuff, and these people donated the use of a bounce house. And so it kind of grew into a thing, and a few hundred people showed up, and man, people were getting saved. We had the craziest service right there just under the shelter over at the park. And my buddy Andrew, we just looked at each other and said, I think we found our calling, And
or your calling found you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely. And so we do exactly that. We just go through Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee, all over the mountains in these different towns every month. And we're doing the same thing. And we have, almost 1,000 people show up sometimes. And it's amazing to get a whole gym full of, because most of these people come in and they don't go to church. They've never been in a church, and so they're hearing Christ for the first time, and it's amazing. People are coming off of addictions of pills and drugs, and people come into our services drunk even, and I love it. I love it.
It's hard to think, though, Josh, that you could live in America and have not heard the gospel.
Yes.
And, I've watched a little bit of your television show and some of the videos. You're going into some areas where there's huge amounts of poverty.
Yes.
And I was struck by, oh my goodness, this is my own state. This is my own country. So kind of tell us about that.
Absolutely. Well, the show, it just kind of focuses on, we go to people's houses and we go and just, it's hard to believe the situations that people are living in unless you see it for yourself.
Right.
And so we're trying to shine light on that and show that, there's little girls right now tonight that will go to bed and they have holes in their roof, mold growing down their walls. They don't have heat. They don't have air and conditionings. I've seen this one family did have a pool, but the water in it was so green and so just like, it's a different world up there. And if you open their cabinets, there's no food. There's mice, there's roaches, there's lice. It's like a third world country.
It's horrific. And I know that I was especially struck by one part in the video where there's this little girl, this dilapidated like house or structure behind her, and she says, the winters around here are really cold. And then it like goes to another scene and a mom or an adult woman says, yeah, a lot of us, we don't have heat. And I think, I just sort of think that most people at least have utilities, but yet what areas are you in that are like this?
These are the areas that are deepest back in the mountains. Some of the roads that it takes to get to these, it's in southern West Virginia, really on the line of Virginia and Kentucky, way back there. They're just two-lane roads that go way back in the mountains and coal mining towns where a lot of the coal mines have shut down. And so, one of these towns was actually one of the most prosperous towns in America. When the coal mines were there, it was just money everywhere. And now it's like every building in town is shut down. It's terrible. It's terrible.
And so you really, through just wanting to do an outreach with the bouncy house and feed people, that's how it started, and now you're in all of these areas. Are you shocked by what you've learned and found?
I have found that God is amazing. Yeah. I have found that, yes, when you step out to do something for Christ, He really lines it up. I could sit here all day and tell you all the things that God has done through our ministry just by having me really at the right time, at the right place at the right time. And it's amazing what God is doing. I was up in West Virginia one day, way back in this town. And I just happened to be standing next to this guy, and we were kind of just, breezing back and forth. And I was telling him what we were there to do and stuff. And he just kind of turned to me. He was like, well, Josh, I'm the Eastern manager for World Vision. Why don't you come up here to our warehouse? We'll kind of get connected. And he started talking about, sending 18-wheelers to us once a month, and I thought, an 18-wheeler, that was my reaction. You just look up and say, God, oh my gosh, and so that's happening now. Every single month we get an 18-wheeler full of toys and furniture, anything you can possibly think of, clothing.
So it's got to be like Christmas for these people.
It
I mean,
is.
you come into town, you've got an 18-wheeler with toys and food for people that don't have work readily available to them, who have been living in this poverty and these horrific conditions for years. And, as I was watching one of the videos, I was just thinking how hopeless a person would become if, like, that's how your mom lived and that's how you live, and there's, like, nothing out in front of you, but you come in this 18-wheeler with all this stuff, and you get to share the gospel.
It's amazing. It's like a light comes on the inside, and they're somehow reminded that there is hope, even in a terribly hopeless situation. And they jump up and down, they scream, the parents cry, and especially at Christmas time, they cry. They say, if you wouldn't have shown up, they wouldn't have gotten anything. And the partnerships just keep coming. We actually just partnered with another television station in South Carolina. They want to bring an additional 18-wheeler for Christmas. They said they'd have hundreds of bicycles and thousands of basketballs and footballs, and it's amazing. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Well, because God loves people.
Yes.
And so when we step out and we're willing in faith to serve people, God's going to bring those resources. And I know that you're also an artist, and I want to talk a little bit about that, because God is really working in some unique ways with your music to help Anchor Ridge and what you're working on.
Yes. I didn't start really singing until these outreach events. I know, the whole thing is God. It's so cool just to wake up every morning.
So like you never thought you wanted to be an artist or anything like that? You just started singing because this kind of came to you, this
Well, I had
calling.
a dream.
Yeah.
I had a dream that I could play guitar and I could sing, and I was going all over the country. And at this time when I had the dream, I was waiting tables at a small town little restaurant. And, but I was like, okay, God, whatever. And so it was Black Friday. My mom, we went to a pawn shop and got me a guitar, and I just started kind of strumming it and stuff. And so
how long ago was it when you had this dream?
that was about 2010, 2011.
Okay. All right, so some years ago.
A few years ago. And so, fast forward now, the new song just came out, You Never Leave. And yes, and every download, it helps us feed even more children. We use every bit of the funds from that to just pour it right back into these families. And we actually got to go to California and make a music video in Los Angeles and all up and down the coast and stuff. And so people can go online and see that. But the whole process has just been nearly mind-blowing. It's just neat.
No, I think it is mind-blowing. Now, so I just want to know, so you had this dream that you were traveling everywhere and you're playing this music, but you were waiting on tables. So in the dream you could play the guitar?
In the dream,
In the dream. But in real life at that time,
in real life, I
could
could
play the
not.
guitar?
No, and actually it just seemed to me like one of the hardest instruments to play. I was like, I wouldn't have no idea.
Well, they'd all seem hard to me. So when you go to the pawn shop, like, are you just immediately able to play the guitar, or what do you do?
No, I took it home and I sat on my bed. I was like, God, if you want me to play this thing, you're just going to have to teach me. And I looked up a few chords online, and I would just so terribly strum it, just sitting there, and I remember the very first song I played, which is still one of my favorite songs. It's called None But Jesus. And so I just would sit there on my bed strumming, and it just,
so you looked up online some chords, you learned a few things, and then you just started putting that practice into place.
Yeah. And then, sometimes these songs just come to me. And so I'll be riding down the road or something, and I'll just have to pull over and just get it down as fast as I can. I don't know how to explain that, but it's like a download, and so we write all our own music and stuff, so I love it.
Yeah, that's really amazing that all got spurred by a dream, and then years later that you would just have a heart to do this outreach, and somebody gives this bouncy house, and that hundreds of people show up. I mean, that's amazing, and then it really was like your calling found you.
It truly is. I can tell you, it's amazing. You have no idea. I could sit here for 2 weeks and tell you all the stuff. I was working in a restaurant. I had just moved back from Houston, Texas, and my life was completely broken. I mean, it was bad. It was very bad. I was just coming off antidepressants and stuff, and all this stuff just bad happening in my life. And I said, you know what? I just threw up my hands, and I moved back to North Carolina. I said, Well, because I had a pretty good job stuff, and too, and I gave all that stuff up, and I was like, okay, God, I'm ready for whatever you have for me. And it took 7 days after I moved back from Houston for this guy came in into the restaurant one day. It was a snowstorm, and they got trapped. I wasn't supposed to be there, and they weren't supposed to be there either. But God had a plan, and
He had a plan.
He always has a plan.
You went from all that to what you're doing now. We've got to take a break, so we want you, of course, to stay with us. We're going to let you take a little look at a video at what Josh Paul is doing with Anchor Ridge.
All right, so it is about 8 a.m. We're in Bluefield, West Virginia, and we're getting ready to head it's about an hour and a half northwest of here today. We're going to be riding through the mountains, finding these families that need us the most. And more specifically, we're going to try to find the families who have children who need to be in our sponsorship program so that we can, love on them once a month with groceries and all kinds of stuff. We got the trailer outside in the parking lot. It's ready to go. We've got heaters. We've got toys for the kids today. We've got groceries, toiletry supplies. It's packed full. It's gonna be awesome. So we're just gonna be riding the roads today. We got a few leads, but we also are just gonna go and stop by some random houses too and see if we can just bless some people up here today. So let's go.
My name is Tiffany and I'm 9 years old. I live in West Virginia. The winters around here are really cold. When I grow up, I want to be an artist and a hairstylist. Living in the mountains is not easy. Sometimes we run out of food at the end of the month.
This is for Tiffany.
Wow. Wow, it's bigger than you are. Dang it.
And Starbucks.
Oh, thank you.
Starbucks!
Yay!
Starbucks!
And some other stuff for your bed.
Oh, God.
These are really good light bulbs. They're like, they use like no power. But they're 60 and they're really nice ones.
This is for you.
They last for 15,000. This is, yeah. Yay! It's like Christmas. After we left Tiffany's house, we headed on over to Michael and Charity's house. They're both still waiting for a sponsor, but they need some repairs done to their home, so we're gonna go check it out and see if we can get a team to go in and fix up their house.
My name is Michael.
My name is Charity.
I'm 11 years old and I live in West Virginia.
I'm 7 years old and I live in West Virginia. And I have a dolly named Big Mama. Mikey told me that because she was big and she looked like my mommy, and Mikey said, I think we should name her Big Mama because she looks like mommy and she is big.
All right, are you ready? You want to see? Isn't that thing cool? Look how big it is. Later in the evening, we met Bubba, Tristan, and Madison for the very first time. The parents were too ashamed to have us come to their house because they said it needed too many repairs and it was in too bad a shape, so we met them at a neighboring house. While we were there, we got to give them all kinds of toys and treat bags and groceries and all kinds of supplies for them to take home with them. I'd like to invite you on a trip into the Appalachian Mountains with us. We go every single month and we take about 20 tons of supplies with us to give out to the families who are in need. And, we gather in a parking lot or in a school gym and we just declare the goodness of the Lord and we give out the supplies. But most importantly, we're declaring the goodness of the Lord over these families, reminding them that, they're not forgotten about. We haven't forgotten about them. And certainly God has not forgotten about these sweet children. And so go to Anchor now, anchornow.org.
you can find out how you can sponsor one of these sweet kids, or, come on a trip with us into Kentucky, into West Virginia, into Tennessee, and it'll make a difference in these kids' life that will last a lifetime. Go to anchornow.org. We'll see you in the Appalachian Mountains.
You can purchase a copy of today's show for $15. Call us at 615-754-0039 or send a check to the address on the screen. Please mention the program number on the screen.
For more information on a guest, visit our website, ctntv.org.
And that was a look at what Josh Paul does with Anchor Ridge. And Josh, I'm just so happy to be talking to you today and to hear about really all these divine appointments that I just know could not happen without God calling you to this ministry, Anchor Ridge, where you're just really reaching out, and would really like to just pick up that conversation and how, in 7 days, your life just really changed, got you back to where you needed to be, and then...
Oh man, it's been an adventure ever since. It took 7 days after I moved back from Houston. I was working in the in the restaurant, and this guy came in the snowstorm, and I wasn't supposed to be working a shift that day, and he got trapped there, and so they were staying at the hotel across the street, and it was just a divine appointment. And that's how because we also have a connection with Operation Blessing.
Mm-hmm.
They also give us an 18-wheeler every month, and that happened, that's what came out of that day in the snowstorm. And so I just, you look back over your whole adventure, and it's like, gosh, every step of the way God had it. And even in the times, that you worry about things and you don't know what's going to happen, and you think maybe things aren't going to work out, I've learned so many times that God truly is. He's behind the scenes orchestrating every single thing, and we may not be able to see it yet, And so I love to tell my story to everybody because, if God can use somebody like me, I was just a server in a restaurant. I was just, living an ordinary life, and God, He can truly use anybody.
And how has your life changed, would you say, Josh, going into such areas of huge poverty in these coal mining towns where there's not a lot of work, and back into the mountains with people living in poverty and sometimes no utilities? How has that changed you?
It makes you truly appreciate everything that you do. I'll be sitting at home. I have a view, I can look out in the mountains from my house, and, I think so often, just on the other side of that ridge, there's people living over there with no heat, no power. And oftentimes, because we go to their house, we'll be pulling out of the driveway, and I'll just think to myself, I get to pull out of this situation and drive home, and these kids are stuck. They can't go anywhere. They not only that, but they don't know that there's a world outside of these mountains. They don't know that there's a better life they could be living because, like you said, it's passed down from generation to generation. And until we go in there and shine that light and break that and turn on their light and turn on the hope, and and I truly believe that Jesus Christ is truly the only thing that can help them and can save them.
The only permanent hope
Yes.
is Jesus Christ. I mean, a hot meal, clothes, warm water, those are all wonderful blessings, but Jesus is the one. How did you come to faith in Christ?
Well, I grew up, my mom grew me up in a Baptist church, Southern Baptist church here in, over in North Carolina. And so I always had that sort of in me, but like a lot of people, I kind of went out and did my own thing. And that's when I was in Houston. I was at the end of maybe like a 3-year thing where I had lived in New York City and Indianapolis and Houston and all these other places. And life was hard. Life is hard out there without God. They say the Christian life is hard, but I like to say it's hard out there without Him.
The Bible says that, for the transgressor, life is hard.
Yeah, it is very hard,
Yes.
And so that is when I just threw my hands up and I just went back to North Carolina, and I just, that's when things really started changing for me. I just gave my life back to Christ, and I've never been the same ever since.
That's amazing. And sometimes we have to come to the end of ourselves before we see what God really has for us and what's truly meaningful. And really even, your story about the music and how God giving you a dream years ago of playing music and traveling, and now how he would combine that with helping those funds, helping to bring the hope of Christ to people who are living in poverty. That's amazing.
It is amazing. Well, I like to tell people, don't ever discount yourself. It would blow your mind if you knew the plan that God has for you, And just like with the song, it's called, You Never Leave. And that has just been a big part of this ministry for me. When I wrote the song, it was back in 2013 or 14, and actually Andrew and I, he's the keyboard player with me today, we were driving out to Wyoming, and at that time in my life, I was also opening a company. We were doing the ministry. I had other things going on, just life things, and we were driving this box truck up. We drove up through Kentucky and over across Nebraska, and it was, I would have to say, the wildest ride I've ever seen. It was like thundering and lightning and snowing, and the wind was blowing. It felt like it was going to blow our truck over, which don't sound like much now. But when we were there and that night, and it was literally blowing us off the road, I just kept thinking, this is just like my life. I'm being blew all over the place. And, I think sometimes we get into those places in life where we think nothing is ever going to change, and we think that maybe God left us. And I just started thinking, even through all this, I know that God is with me right now, and somehow, because His Word promises, that all this is going to work out for my good, and it just sure has.
And it's something that we learn, and then we learn again, and then we learn again. Like, we know that He's never going to leave, but we go through these different tests and trials, and He shows us again that He's never going to leave. And so, we've seen a little bit by way of video the work that you do in terms of outreach, and you've talked about how you shine the light and you give the hope of Christ to people who have never seen life in a different way, and how they jump up and down and the different reactions, that you get. What are some of the changes that you see as people accept Christ? What are some of the changes that you see?
So we have a sponsorship program, and so a lot of times we'll go back to the same towns as well in West Virginia every month, and you'll see the ones that kind of came around at first. They'll be the ones showing up first at the truck and saying, "Hey, how can I give you a hand?" Or they'll be telling me stories about how they met somebody who was walking around along the road, and they picked them up, and while they took them to the store, they were telling them about Jesus and how they changed their life. And so it's really a ripple effect. And I like to tell people this all the time. We have no idea when we get to heaven how many people our life is going to have touched by just a kind word here, or a smile there, or a hug there, and I just love that. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, and I personally think it's good that we won't know until we get to heaven. I think that's the best way. That's just, we'll just find out at that point how many people have been touched and that sort of thing. You mentioned a sponsorship program. What is that?
This has been one of my most favorite things that we started. We actually started this back in early 2017, and this is where we connect people from all over the country have been doing this. It's amazing. We connect a single individual with an individual child in the mountains, and we send you the sizes and stuff, and so you can send them a new pair of shoes. You can send them an Easter basket or a Christmas present, and they'll write you a little letter back, or send you a picture with an update and stuff. It's just connecting two people on the planet that would have otherwise never been connected. Not only that, the kids just think it's so special when they get a letter from their sponsor or something. They just some of them cry and stuff, and a lot of them would never get this stuff if their sponsor did not send it to them. And it's been amazing how God has been working in it.
Well, that is amazing. And I think, Josh, most people want to do good and want to be helpful. We just don't always know how to. And I think, again, I was so taken aback to think that this kind of poverty is it's in our backyard, and to think that children wouldn't get a Christmas present for year after year. There are families have hard times, and maybe 1 year Christmas is lean, but you're really talking about generations.
Oh, years and years. This one lady, she's in the town where we do sponsorships, and I just sat down with her one day. We were just talking back and forth, and she was just telling me how much she appreciated us coming and doing this for her kids, because she went maybe 30 years and never even got a Christmas present. She said what they did for Christmas is if they could just get up enough to have a big meal together, that she said that was just enough
That
for me.
was their Christmas.
Yep.
That is amazing. Well, we're out of our talking time, but you're going to stick around and do some music for us, right?
Yes.
Well, thank you for coming and sharing. In just a moment, you'll get to enjoy Josh Paul and the song You Never Leave.
When the wind blows and I don't know what I'm gonna do, and the ground shakes, I've had all I can take. You know what I'm going through. I won't leave my voice in the middle of this storm. No mountain high, no valley low, no place on earth your love won't go. You reach your hand to rescue me, untie these chains and set me free. You never have forsaken me, yeah. By my side you'll always be. You never leave. You never leave me on the boulevard, oh, red-eye flights and late-night drives. You are, oh, you're holding me together now. And if I start to fall apart, will you pick me up and remind me who you are? Remind me who you are, Lord. No mountain high, no valley low, no place on earth your love won't go. You reach your hand to rescue me, untie these chains and set me free. You never have forsaken me, yeah. By my side you'll always be, yeah, yeah, yeah. You never leave in the valley of the shadow, in the midnight hour. I know when the storm comes and the wind blows and the fire, oh God, I know you are with me. You will not leave. Your hand is guiding me. Your hand is guiding me. No mountain high, no valley low, no place on earth your love won't go. You reach your hand to rescue me, untie these chains and set me free. No